One day in New York, I went to work and came back home to find wood splashed and starred in white paints waiting for me, like a glass of wine, or a pleasant dream, or a kiss, or a goddamn give no quarter challenge. This wood had power, this driftwood, this rubbish possessed by the artist. It had been transformed into a lethal weapon, or merely a building standing on its own next to the financial center in lower New York. So you want to hear about poetry, huh? I mean, I've been writing poetry all my life, since I was a teenager, 14 years old. So that makes me almost 50 years, not quite 50 years of writing poetry. Poetry has saved my life many times. I think it can save the life of anyone who reads it, who encounters it, on the street, in the bar, in a book. Everyone who reads poem is reading a kind of message from the God, and that message heals. Poetry is not only useful for funerals, for moments of lamentation, for sad moments of sadness. It liberates energies that are divine within the soul, it connects you to history, it connects you to the spirit world. Poetry is a kind of word music. So it's a sort of music. I guess it's just that it's music made of words and rhythms and meters. So when I write a poem, I'm writing a kind of music. There is a poem I wrote, a book I wrote in Portuguese called Música Subterrânea, underground music. So we are always looking for the music of the spheres. And the poet is simply a vessel for that music, a messenger for that music. And it's a music that heals, that calms, and liberates all at the same time. When Walt Whitman wrote Song of Myself, he said, "I'm grand, I contain multitudes." And he says, he contradicts himself. We are both innocence and experience together, as in William Blake, the songs of innocence and the songs of experience. So we live with those, with experience and with sad and innocence, and we convey that in our poetry. So for me, it's ultimately an act of salvation, an act of healing, an act of liberation, all of this in writing and in reading poems. Not only in writing them, the poem does not belong to the poet anymore. It belongs to the person who encounters it, listening to it, reading it. So this is it's been my life. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I will keep writing poems as long as I can keep making sense of the nonsense. The world is full of chaos, and the poem is a kind of ordering, making order out of the abyss, out of the chaos. So we make a song out of very deep emotions and sadnesses, and the song liberates us. It releases endorphins when we write. It's like walking or exercising, an exercise of the mind, of the soul, writing a poem. I walk 10,000 steps a day to heal, to keep my body fit. So in my mind, I'm walking 10,000 steps, writing poems every day if I can. That's my goal. And when I write in English, I might get tired and I'll start writing in French or in Spanish or in Portuguese or in Haitian. The whole idea is to keep the languages. The language you choose to write in is less important than the fact that what you have to say, the images you wish to convey. because it's a kind of painting with words, poetry. You're talking of things that you can see and touch, as well as a music, so you can hear the words. And you can feel the words in your blood and in your heart. So it's a very complete act, making a poem. And you know, the painter, the musician, the poet, these are all sister arts. And I think in each of these arts, you can find reflections of the other arts. Dance as well. Music, dance, poetry, painting, art, making art. And what do you make art of? Politics, the business of the community. The word polis, community affairs, community business. You make art from that. You don't just write in a vacuum for nothing or for yourself alone. You write, you're compelled to write for others. Love your neighbor, Christ says. Love the other. Write for your neighbor. Write across the border. Break down the borders between peoples. That's another reason I write poetry. To cross the border lines. To eliminate the borders. I don't believe in borders. I'm a migrant. I've been traveling across borders all my life. I was born in a country, Ceylon, that no longer exists. It's now known as Sri Lanka. So symbolically, I've been a migrant crossing borders. I don't like borders. I like to eliminate borders. And I've been doing this in poetry too, writing across border lines in different languages. I've written and published books in 5 different languages. Not because I am vain or ambitious. I just think that's what a poet should do. Destroy the borders. Destroy the barriers between human beings. That's what I hope to do. It's an idealistic point of view. It's a utopian point of view, but I want to eliminate borders. And I do it in my own way, by my own practice, writing across border lines. And that is my purpose. That is why I write. My writing is political in that sense. It has a message, and it's about eliminating borders. It has a message. It is about eliminating war. Right? We are all trying to stop the sources of our hatreds and our conflicts. So I suppose a poet is a kind of a preacher as well. But I hope that my poems are not read as sermons, rather that they're enjoyed for their word music. You know, just when Bob Dylan sang "Blowing in the Wind," he didn't quite know what he was saying, but his song spoke to a whole generation of people. When Allen Ginsberg wrote "How," I have seen the best minds of my generation starving, naked, looking for an angry fix. I mean, he was speaking not only for himself, but for everybody. And so that's the goal, I suppose. If there is an ambition for me, it is to speak as for we, not only for I. Even though inevitably an artist comes out of his own head and his own heart and hopes to speak for every head and every heart. Now, there are divisions in the world. I hope a poem helps heal some of those divisions. Yeah? Very important work for me, and it is work and it's pleasure at the same time, right? It's incredibly liberating when one actually writes the poem, you know, and shares it. The poem only lives when it's shared, when it's read, it becomes part of the community, it becomes part of the language of the city, you know. Plato did not want poets in the city because they have a tendency towards the irrational, the chaotic. But we have to harness the chaotic energies of the world and make order from them, and that's what we do as poets.